Let's bring Bob Chapman up, talking about this. Bob, from your research, talking with Wayne Paul, CPA, and brother of Ron Paul, the congressman, what's your take on this whole case?
Well, they don't care what the Constitution says, and they have their own method of operating the court system. And unfortunately, you have no rights. And by going to court, you might conceivably win, but the chances are very, very strong that you won't, because judges do what they're told to do. Most of them are appointed, and so, especially in federal district court, and so, you don't get a good day in court.
We got the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals 2 weeks ago ruled there's no Fourth Amendment. Police can come in your house without a warrant now with no probable cause. I mean, this is insane.
Well, what it's going to lead to, unfortunately, ultimately, is probably anarchy. And, maybe that's the intention of the power behind government. I personally, because of my political activities, was audited 12 years in a row. And I never was found to owe tax. And, of course, that's illegal, because if they find that you do not own tax, they can't audit you on the same items for the following 3 years. They do it anyway.
Well, that's like, the Government Accounting Office and others, 80+% of the letters they send, they're wrong. Even in their fraudulent system, they're wrong, and then they never get in trouble for it. And then when they audit you and it costs you all this money to go through the audit, they don't get in trouble. But as a private citizen, you frivolously sue somebody, you can be opened up to serious liability. I mean, it's just a lawless, disgusting, filthy group. We'll talk to Wayne Paul again soon as this case continues to unfold. Wayne, we appreciate your great courage and your tireless fight against the New World Order.
Thanks, Alex. I appreciate it.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks.
Say hi to Ron for me next week, okay?
I'll do it.
All right, take care. There he goes, another great Texan. Okay, going back to Bob Chapman. With us for the rest of the hour. Bob, there's so much I want to cover here, but every week we get you on in the third hour, and I just have to say, how do you call it? I mean, I've seen no expert, Nobel Prize winner Stiglitz, not even Dr. Paul Greg Robertson. He's been very accurate. Gerald Celente does a great job on trends, but the way you specifically 2 years ago called how the bailout would happen, and then how they'd come back in 2010 and try to fully bankrupt the planet. 8 months ago, how they were planning to bring down, starting with Spain and Greece, and then 14 other nations. That's now, the media is now, I was listening to Bloomberg Financial last night and this morning on the radio, on my XM, I have Sirius, it was like Bob Chapman was talking, but they were snickering and giggling and saying how great it was and how the banks have record profits and how they've gotten more power, and they're just laughing on CNBC and everywhere else. They're saying Greece may have to give the private IMF, World Bank, and EU bankers their islands that are large parts of Greece. That's an island to begin with. Goldman Sachs, it's come out 10 years ago, and you wrote about this 10 years ago, engineered this. Now they are fully running the country. The same things that were done to the third world are now being done here. They're openly announcing their Bank of the World, world government taking over in the next 16 months, carbon taxes on everyone. It's coming out, police have quotas to arrest innocent people, give out tickets. I mean, it is hellish. And it's one thing to know this is coming. It's another thing to see it happening. So, Bob, how do you do it, A? And B, what's coming next now?
Well, first of all, I do a terrific amount of research. And, I've been reading and writing for 50 years. And so I'm very gifted in the fact that I have a photographic memory. And I remember little details that happened many, many years ago, even statistics. And so I've got a God-given gift, and so I'm able to put together a lot of things that other people can't put together because they don't have that equipment. But it really, really takes a lot of hard work. And you were just speaking about the situation in Greece and Europe, which we discussed last week. And
which you wrote about 10 years ago. You said Greece would be the first to go. 10 years ago.
Yeah, well, not only that, I thought Italy would be right with them, and I don't think they're going to be far behind. And one of the reasons is that Italy, I believe, and of course it's a secret, I think they leased out, which is tantamount to selling more than half the gold that they had, and I think it's long gone. And so they're in a worse position than they were 10 years ago.
And by the way, 15 years ago, you and many others, and myself 14 years ago, exposed that the UN takes over national parks and land and roads for the IMF and World Bank, and that deals have been signed for the U.S. And when they sold out 25 ports 2 years ago, they admitted this was part of that. And now they're telling Greece, give us your islands and your infrastructure. And now we've got the leader of the Democrats in the Senate saying they're going to do that here in the United States.
Right. Absolutely. I think what's going to happen in Europe is that the U.S. will secretly be the largest donor to the bailout, followed by France and Germany, unfortunately for them. And
the so-called bailout will just be our tax money buying Greece to give it to the bankers.
Right, and I don't think they'll give up their islands. But it was brought up, there's no question. And, of course, the Greeks brought up the question of German gold, and the Greeks got the gold back. And it's in this issue coming out tomorrow of the International Forecaster. There was a letter to the editor. Someone wrote to me and described how the whole thing went. And so the explanations by the Greeks are untrue. I've seen the other side of the story as well, so let's just put it this way. It's up for debate. There's two sides to that story. But what's going to happen is, and the reason the bankers did this, that down the road here, in a year or two, there's 19 countries who are either in bankruptcy but not declared. I guess the only one that might be declared is Iceland, and are on the edge, like the United States and Great Britain, and perhaps Ireland and Spain and Portugal as well, and perhaps even Italy. The point is, they're going to gather them all together and have their big meeting, and they're going to realign all the currencies. There'll be domestic devaluations all over the world.
Stay there. Let's start over on the big world government. The bankers bankrupt everybody through fraud and then say, we rule the planet. Gentlemen, there's no doubt that the media is saying the 9/11 truther did the shooting at the Pentagon yesterday. I've been predicting this because I saw them prepping the public for it. I'm going to break it down with Bob coming up in the next segment. Also, calls coming up. Nobel Prize-winning economist, Federal Reserve System is corrupt and undermining our country. That's Joseph Stiglitz, Nobel Prize winner. Continuing here, I've got all these other news articles admitting, here's Joseph Stiglitz again, saying it's corrupt, undermining our country. IMF-style austerity measures come to America. Everything that's been done in other countries now happening here. We're coming to this critical juncture where we're going into total bondage to private banks who are setting up their own government and getting the G20 together to sign on to it. Bob Chapman, continue where we cut you off.
Well, I think that the Greek affair, we'll call it, was instigated and executed because they're going to take all these countries down. They're ready to do it. It'll happen sometime over the next couple of years, if probably more so a year or more from now. But, who knows? But that's what they're steaming for now. I was really surprised they pulled it that way and did it that way. I just didn't expect it, because most people who look at these kinds of things in Europe, they knew all about this. I mean, Greece and Italy's problems. And
well, wait a minute. I mean, you're saying you're surprised. You predicted all of this.
I know, but I'm surprised that they went at it this way, because it's been common knowledge that all these countries were problematic. I thought they'd probably do something with the U.S., execute some sort of a move which would take the country down, and maybe they yet will, to join the others, so to speak. But the culmination of the whole thing is that what they're about now is taking the whole world down. And I think that's not too far away. A year ago we talked about 3 years, and now we're talking about 2 years. But it could be a little bit more expeditious than that.
Well, what Von Rompuy's saying, head of the EU, what Ban Ki-moon, head of the UN, saying, what Gordon Brown, who really is the omnibudsman of this, he says in the next 16 months they're going to form their global banking constitution over all nations. And they said from Copenhagen they don't care if nations don't sign on. The executive branches will implement this. And they're just celebrating.
Well, I don't know whether they'll be celebrating at that time, because the people of the world, I think, are finally going to say, no, we've had enough of this.